All right, welcome back to the rocket tutorial series. This is video number 7. In this video, we're going to quickly cover just adding health to our rocket and seeing if we can go a little further. So we're going to subtract some health every time we collide with an asteroid, and we'll see if maybe we can throw up some heads up with the value of our health for our rocket, and maybe destroy our rocket when we lose all of our health. So the first thing I'm going to do is organize my main scene. I'm going to add a Asteroid Manager, and I like to drop all of my asteroids under my Asteroid Manager. And really, for a first level, this is a lot of asteroids. Now that I've added my Asteroid Manager, I'm going to add my Asteroid Manager script. And you can drag it out of the project window or just add it there. And if you remember from our last tutorial and you've been following along, our asteroids on start are going to register themselves with the Asteroid Manager. In future tutorials, it might make sense to reverse that, so the Asteroid Manager instantiates all of our asteroids and sends in a reference of itself to the asteroids, which is a little better architecture so that the asteroids don't have to call out. But for now, we're going to leave it like this. The other change I want to make is I just want to make sure I keep all of our asteroids underneath the Asteroid Manager, especially the new ones that get generated. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump into the asteroid controller that's on all of our asteroids here. And let's go and find the part where we instantiate some new asteroids. So here we are, line 67, we're instantiating our asteroid. If you roll over this, there's 9 overloads. There's one quick way we can do this is we can set our, let's see. So if you just start a method and hit the up or down arrow key in Visual Studio, you'll see those 9 overloads. In one of these overloads, we have our instantiate method. It wants the object that we're instantiating, then it wants the parent, and then it wants what the world space, whether we're instantiating into world space or not. That one looks interesting. This one could just be parent. In all of these, we don't get the position, though. So instead of altering the instantiate method, we can just tell our asteroid, we can call asteroid dot transform dot set parent, and then we'll give it a parent. And it could be transform dot, and in this case we know that our parent is the Asteroid Manager, so we can just say transform.parent. So now this will make sure that all of our asteroids instantiate under this Asteroid Manager object. Alright, so I'll go ahead and save that and give it a quick test. And let's see what happens when we explode. Boom. Okay, where are we going? So everybody lives under that main asteroid. Yep, there's no asteroids popping up outside. So if I close this, you will see that we are getting our explosions outside of the Asteroid Manager. But all the asteroids are still staying in there. So we can also maybe move our explosions here. Let's go ahead and pop this open. And if you remember, play explosion. We instantiate our explosion down here. Play explosion happens when we collide. So we collide, we start a coroutine to play explosion. And that jumps us down here. Play explosion and instantiates explosion. And then we can do the same thing here. Explosion dot transform dot SetParent, and then we'll just say transform dot parent. Okay, so now everybody should be living under that Asteroid Manager. Okay, so that's just a little housekeeping there. Now everything's under there. We don't have to worry about that anymore, which is kind of nice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just move these asteroids around a little bit because I don't like them being so uniform. So I'll just quickly just kind of give them some random positions, and maybe I'll reduce the number of asteroids that we have as well. Let's see. Once I've moved them around, we'll check and see whether reducing them makes any sense. Yeah, kind of don't like the total number of asteroids in here. So let me just delete a couple of these. Okay, drop that over there. It's a big one. Let's get rid of this little one here. Let's just scale. Now remember, you can use WQWERT to change the way you're manipulating objects. So if you keep your fingers over there by QWERT, you can just quickly move things around, scale them up and down. Okay, so I'm not going to mess around with this a ton. I'm sure there are more interesting ways to do this. But I'll leave it there. I had to hit save real quick and just run through, make sure everything's still kosher. All right. Looks good still. Okay. Giant explosion there. Now, we're still living with this bug where if the explosions happen too quickly, some of these explosion effects still live. They don't get destroyed. What I think is happening is maybe the asteroids are exploding and getting destroyed before the explosion is in some cases. Okay, so let's move on to the health of the rocket ship, which is what I really want to focus on this time. And so I'm going to go into the player controller. And you can see this is a fairly short script. We've got, let's see, we've got a start, we've got an update, and that's about it. Got a couple properties. So let's add a new property here. And I'm going to make it a serialized field so that it's exposed. I'm going to make it an integer and call it health. And I'll set it to 100 by default. Now, as I said, we only had two properties in here, the start and the update. I'm going to go ahead and add a third, two methods. I'm going to add a third method here. And it's going to be an OnTrigger enter. Just like our asteroids are reacting to collisions, we want our rocket to react to collisions. So just real simple, we'll stub this in here. We'll just go ahead and say if health is less than or equal to 0, then we've been destroyed. We've been destroyed, and we'll just say destroy for now. We're just going to destroy ourselves. And every time we come in here, we will pretend like we're going to lose 10 health points. So there we go. Now you should see there's our health down there in the inspector. We're at 100. We're going to hit this guy. Now we're at 90. Just keep hitting things until we get to, now we're at 80. 70, 60, 50, 40, 30, 20. Ooh, boom. There we go. We are gone. Well, that's it. Game over. All right. It's a wrap. Okay, so now that we have our health down to 0, and we can see that the health is working every time we collide with the an asteroid, we could certainly take the size of the asteroid, the scale of it, and use that scale as a factor in the amount of health that we lose. So as opposed to losing 10 each time, maybe we could lose the scale amount, maybe round it down. So we could lose, we could lose 11 here, 10, 9 there, 15 there, and that might make a little more sense. We'd lose 3 on this one. So that could be interesting. Why don't we do that real quick? So instead of losing 10, we're just going to lose mathf.floor. Floor, and we can do toInt. And we will take the other, so that's the incoming colliding object, dot transform dot scale, the local scale dot x component. So that is going to take away that scale as the health damage. All right, boom. And actually, we're not looking here. All right, we're at 85 right now. If I hit one of those little ones, boom, 82. That must have been a really small one. 81, 75, 66. Yeah. So there we go. I hit the big ones, and we lose a lot more. Let's just keep hitting these things. 38, 32. Oof, can't hit them. 22, almost there. 17, 7, ooh, 2, boom. Okay, so you can see that's working pretty well. We could do interesting things in here if our health is between, I don't know, let's say 0 and 20. We could start flashing our ship red, or we could change our color or something. We could add some sort of UI element that's flashing, showing us that we're in danger of dying. Okay, but instead of doing that, I'm going to go ahead and add a UI component. I'm going to go ahead and add a UI text mesh pro element. And now this is going to add several objects to my scene. So you can see it added a canvas, and it added a text TMP, and you can see it populated that text right on the screen. Now this is where things get really interesting with canvas elements, or the UGUI system in Unity. If you click on the canvas element, or a game object, you'll see that there's a canvas component on it, and it has a render mode. The render mode is really important here. So the render mode can be overlay, camera, and these two are in screen space or in world space. So now screen space is what you see on your game screen, but not in 3D space. So it's a 2D element. With overlay, it's always going to overlay here on the screen. With camera, it'll overlay in your camera space. So it'll be relative to your camera. With world space, this now becomes 3D text. So I can start manipulating this text in 3D. Because we're in an orthographic camera, you can't really tell from doing a translate, but maybe a rotate. Again, it's going to be weird because we're in orthographic. But if you're in a perspective mode, and I can just do that real quick so you can see this. In perspective mode, if you grab this text and you move it around, you'll see it scale back down. So it changes with the actual world position. But we're not going to do all of that. So I'm going to undo until we get our text back into screen space overlay. And now, depending on what your target platform is, the canvas scaler here can be a really important component. So you can scale with the screen size, and you can set your target screen size. So if I were going to do like 1024 by 768, that's kind of my reference resolution, what I plan to build for. And then if devices are going to scale, say it's landscape, and I know a lot of devices change their width in terms of the pixel size, I can scale with the width, I can scale with the height, or I can scale somewhere in between. Yeah, this, I'm not going to worry about this right now though. So I'll leave it back at constant pixel size. Okay, so another thing that you need to know about the UGUI is that there is an anchor system in UGUI. So if I reset all of the properties here, you'll see it's in the middle. So no matter what happens, my camera can move around. My canvas is always in the middle. Okay, so my canvas element is always overlaid. It doesn't matter. It follows the camera everywhere. If I want this text to be in the top, you can see that there are some modifiers here in this window. So you can just click on it once, it pops up. If you hit Shift, it changes the pivot. If you hit Alt, it also changes the position. So if I want the pivot of this object, and let's go back into 2D mode so you can see this. If I want the pivot of this object, let's just let's drop it in there. Okay. So if I want the pivot of this object to be up here, I can hit Shift, put it up there, and you can see the pivot just moved. The object didn't. If I want both the object and the pivot to move, and I hit Alt and Shift. If I just want the object to move, I should just be able to hit Set Position. Okay. Well, it looks like Alt moves both the object and the position. And the pivot. So I'm going to pretend like our health should be maybe on the top right. And with TextMesh Pro, fonts don't come in automatically, but I'm going to use the default font for now, and maybe in the next tutorial I'll show you how to drop in some new fonts. I think there are other fonts besides Liberation Sans, but no, I am wrong. So that's it. That's all there is. But there are some definite benefits to using TextMesh Pro. One is that no matter how close in you get to the text, it always looks super, super crisp. So think about vector fonts. It's not quite vector in that it's using something called distance field, where it has kind of a faded texture sheet, so that it has this little gradient. And as you get closer, it starts using different parts of the gradient to define how that text looks. Okay, so this is our health. Maybe I'll offset it from the top. Now I did set it to 0. I want to hit Alt and Shift and hit that top right. Now X position and Y position will now give me an offset from the top right. And no matter what screen size I use, these guys will always just use the top right as the reference position and then move in. So it's nice if you have your window in free mode or free aspect, you'll see that no matter how you update your window, everything will shift and populate right back in the right position. So that's what's really nice about this anchor system. Okay, so let's see how we can hook this up to our health, the health of our rocket. Let me go back to, I think I was at standalone. There we are. All right, so I'm going to give this a name, Rocket Health UI. So now you can either tie the Rocket Health UI back to the rocket directly, or you can make a game manager. I call this UI. And I'm going to do another cleanup thing here. Just going to say this is 3D. And I'll I'll drop everything that's 3D into the 3D area, and everything that's UI into the UI. So actually, Unity creates this other object that I missed. So there's the canvas. This event system object is for inputs. I'll actually leave it out. But it's for any input that happens on UI elements. So this is another really nice feature or nice component for the UGUI system. So if you select the event system and you're watching the inspector, you can see it gives you all of this information. So I can click anywhere. You can see once I drag over this Rocket Health UI game object, it pops up a bunch of information over here. So you get all sorts of information, whether you're clicked or not, whether it's eligible for clicks. This is really good if you're trying to figure out why something isn't reacting to a click. You can check to see if you're over it or not, or if it's eligible for clicks. But you can also look at other things if you have two-pointer clicks, or if you're working on mobile and you want to see multiple touches, or on a touch screen or something. Okay, so I dropped everything into these separate pockets here. Now, I do want to have a game manager. So I'm going to call this RocketGameManager. And I'll bring this up to the top. Now, again, I like to have a game manager tie things together. So what I'm thinking here is that the Rocket will talk to the game manager, who will then talk to the UI system. And this can get more complex as you build different parts of your game out. But essentially, it makes sense to have something managing all of the logic, passing data back and forth, and making sure that the game state is intact. So in this, we're not going to work on game state, but we will add our game manager here. Game, and we'll just keep it consistent. Rocket Game Manager. I'm going to grab our Rocket Game Manager and drop this on there. This right there. Okay, so we've got our Rocket Game Manager. And again, depending on how you want to architect your game, you can either instantiate your Rocket and maybe your Asteroid Manager, or you can have it baked in here, have a reference to a Rocket. So to keep this simple, we're going to keep making references. So I'm going to say the player controller, and we'll say Rockets. And then, for simplicity's sake, we're going to also have a reference to our TextMesh Pro. And we're not going to get this working right off the bat, but we will call this Rocket Health UI. So the reason that's not working is because we need to add a using statement. And there we go. So now we're going to use this to tie both of these guys together. So again, similar to our asteroids, well, actually I'm not sure if I did this in the asteroids. Let's take a look. No, we didn't. I'm going to clear off some space here. So not similar to our asteroids, but our rocket takes on damage, and we want to update our UI every time a rocket takes on damage. So how is our game manager going to know that our rocket took on some damage? Should I check constantly in an update loop whether our damage has changed? Probably a very inefficient way to do it. So one thing that I like to do is create actions. So I'm going to add the using statement for system, base class there, or base namespace, and I'm going to make a public action on health updated. So now this is an action. It's basically a delegate. So it's something that you can register from another class. You can basically have this method be called inside another class. So, and I'll show you exactly how to do this right now. The details may seem a little confusing at first, but I think as you do this a couple of times, you'll start to understand it. So onHealthUpdated is what we want to do. Anytime our health changes, we're going to call onHealthUpdated, and we're just going to invoke it. So anybody who has registered with onHealthUpdated will get called with this invoke method. What does that mean? Well, let's see. On start, we're going to call rocket.onHealthUpdated, and we're going to add a call here, update rocket UI health. Or, you know what, we can just say rocket health changed. Or just to keep it consistent, let's do updated. Okay, so I'm going to right click, quick actions, generate a quick method there. And now you see anytime onHealthUpdated changes, it calls this method, which is going to call this method. So now in here, we know that our rocket health has changed. We're going to be able to do a lot of things with this, like change the game state. So when the rocket explodes, because its health reached 0, we will want to maybe signify that the game is over and maybe pop up a game over prompt and then move us back to a menu. But for now, I will say rocket UI health UI dot text equals health, and then how do I know what the rocket health is? I'll just type in no, that's not going to work. So I'm going to have to get health somehow. I'll just stub in this idea of health right now. It's going to give me an error. So let me just comment that out. Control K and Control C should do that. So I'm going to go back to the rocket controller, and I want to pass some data through here. And right now we know that health is an integer. So I'm going to pass data through this action. Oops. Whoop. Okay, so where was I? So we had the onHealthUpdated. Now down at the bottom on trigger enter, it's now throwing an error. The reason is because it wants us to send an integer into this invoke method. So we're going to send the health back. So hopefully you followed that. Again, in our action, we added an integer into the greater than less than. Forget what that's called. It's a type. And then down here in the onTrigger, we told our invoke method to send health back. So now we're getting another error. Our rocket health updated method doesn't have, and again, you can roll over these things to see what the issue is. So the rocket health updated matches delegate action int, but there's no int coming in here. So we're just going to say int health, control KC, control KU, control KU. There we go. We've uncommented this. And now it's going to update with our health every time the health changes. So now this example here is pretty basic. We're just sending the health back and forth, but I think you can see the power in something like this. Okay, let's go and lose some health here. Look at that. See that health change up there? That's pretty good. So the reason why that health isn't changing is because, and actually let's get rid of this lighting panel here. The reason it's not changing is because nothing is referenced in any of these slots. So let's go ahead and reference them. Okay, now we should see some changes happen here. Boom, 94, 91, 85. There we go. So now we're getting some real changes there. 9, 4. Ooh, that's it. I'm done. So health is 0. So now we could start reacting to some of these events here in this game manager. So when the rocket health equals 0, we can test that in here. If x health is less than or equal to 0, we'll just debug log. And here we'll say rocket game manager health, or we'll just say rockets exploded, game over. Or maybe, instantiate another life if we have another life. So in this case, we're done here. But so we should see now in the console, it should output that our rocket health reached 0 and then it exploded. So let's go and crash into stuff. Let's crash into a lot of stuff, please. Here we go. Boom. -5. That's another thing we can test for. And we look down here, we can see RocketGameManager. Rocket exploded, game over. All the asteroids are still going on and logging their collisions. And we can go ahead and just remove this one. All right, so I hope you've learned something here. So we've got the start of some UI elements. We've got a connection between our rocket and a new rocket manager that we've created, and we also modified our asteroids. We'll see how we can take this farther in the next tutorial. Again, leave me comments, questions. Happy to help people with any other problems they may have. So feel free to reach out to me. My email is in the About page on my channel here. Yeah. All right. Thank you.